Hello and welcome. My name's Andy Crook, and my mission is to help garage owners become more successful in business. And I'm your host for tonight's training on the subject of the Business Sat Nav. Every week I deliver a free business training to help garage owners become more successful in business. Tonight's subject is on the Business Sat Nav. Before we get into the training, a quick word from our sponsors, which is the Atomic Success Program, which I run in conjunction to this program. So don't want to bog ourselves down too long with the Atomic Success Program, because the idea of doing these lives is to provide free training to business owners. However, the Atomic Success Program builds on these training topics by adding a little bit of support and basically the templates that I used in my business to turn a 75k loss into a modest profit in a little under 2 years. It's all based on the principle of incremental gains, as we'll see tonight, and continuous improvement. The Atomic Success Program can produce massive results. So, the Business Sat Nav, what's it all about then? Well, it's basically your long-term planning for your business and your personal life, as I'll get into in a second. What we're going to cover how you can use your big vision, which is in the Atomic Success Program. What we use the big vision for is your 10-year plan, your long-term goal. How you can use your long-term goal, or what I call your big vision, as a long-term planning tool that's moderately successful, because we don't get too bogged down in the detail. What we're setting ourselves is a big goal, big audacious goal that we're going to try and get to. And we'll give an example of how we do that for our business and our personal goals. So we're going to look at how we use that to work back from instead of working to, which is a bit of a change. And then we're going to look at objections that I always hear when we talk about long-term planning for business. And we'll have a look at these the two most common objections and two quotes that I really like that deal with those objections and what we can do to maybe change your perception of long-term planning. I'm not going to change your opinion, but maybe your perception. And then at the end, we're going to use two examples, both fictitious, that I sort of come up with today, and I run some numbers for the business one to make sure it sort of adds up. And also I did some very, very quick and simple research. It took me about 20 minutes for the personal one. And you'll get an idea of what the Business Sat Nav, or the Sat Nav as I call it in long-term planning, is really about. So there's a couple of sort of loose quotes I'm going to give you this evening, because I haven't written them down. But the first one's by a very, very famous baseball coach in America called Yogi Berra. And he comes out with some absolute classic quotes. If you're looking for quotes for a subject, to liven a subject, then he's normally got one. And his one for planning goes along the lines, I'm paraphrasing here, but if you don't know where you're going, you're very unlikely to get there, which is so true. Yet, the majority, and I'm going to stick my neck out here and say it's probably in the region of 8 out of 10. I did a straw poll in another automotive group a little while ago, and it turned out that about 8 out of 10 business owners didn't have a business plan. Of the two that did, the 2 out of 10, most had a business plan to obtain some sort of finance, and we've covered this ground before. But it just goes to show that they didn't have it because they wanted one, because they were actually planning for their business. They did it to satisfy a need to obtain a grant or some finance of some sort. So that's really interesting to me. So when I start with the Atomic Success Program, when people start on it, this is the thing they find most difficult. There are a number of things that are difficult in the program, and it's very challenging. And I say that because I think most people think, how difficult can it be? Well, some of the stuff that I ask you to do is quite thought-provoking, and I've probably underestimated how long it takes most people to do it. So what do we do when we get in our car and we don't know how to get to a place, and we fire up the Sat Nav? The first thing the Sat Nav asks you to do is to enter at the destination. The more specific you are with the destination, the more accurate the directions are going to be. So if you say the town that you want to get to, it'll take you to the centre of that town, Not much use if you're looking for a particular address. If you put the postcode, it'll get you to the street. If you put the postcode and the house number, it'll put you outside. Now, this is no different to your long-term planning. The more detailed you are with it, the more likely you are to get to the epicenter of whatever it is you want to achieve. Now, that's common sense. But as most people, when we get to the objections, as most people will say, but I've no idea. How on earth do I know? And that's one of the things we'll go through tonight. So once you've put your destination into your sat nav, and everyone can relate to this, the journey isn't a straight line, isn't it? It's not a compass bearing between point A and point B. You don't go off in a straight line. There are many twists and turns on the journey, which is the same for your business journey. And what the sat nav will do, if you've got a sort of a particularly new one, it will also suggest detours. It will also suggest more, should we say, fuel saving routes. It will suggest how to avoid traffic. It will suggest if you want to avoid toll roads. That's what the sat nav's able to do. So it's not a straight line from where you are now to where you want to go. There are a number of things you can do. You can put in waypoints. You can put in places of interest. All of that stuff is what you should be looking at also with your business plan. And how the sat nav does that is it's continuously looking at your current position and your destination, and it's feeding in data basically and offering you options. And they're live updates. I particularly like using Google Maps when I'm on a journey because the traffic is continuously updated. Therefore, if you've got 10 minutes congestion ahead just before you get to that motorway junction, you can nip off and the sat nav will tell you if that route's quicker, or is it worth sitting in the traffic. It's exactly the same with your metrics and your KPIs that you use to monitor your progress in your business. So you can start to see that having a business sat nav is a really good idea. And I call it the business sat nav because that's what I liken it to. What I want you to try and get the idea of is these planning documents. They're not huge tomes of work. In fact, the 10-year plan fits on one side of a piece of paper, and then the next bit of your plan fits on the back of it, and your 1 year plan is basically 10 things you want to achieve. Fits on 2 sides of A4, the way I do it. Because we're not looking for real depth and detail. What we want to know is where we want to get to, what we want to see on the way, what we want to avoid, and what we're going to do to get there. Basic stuff. So how does it work? So when we take the look, so we'll start with the business to begin with, because most people will have an idea of where their business needs to get them to in terms of the next 10 years. Now, if you're, should we say, younger than someone who's going to come to retirement age in the next 10 years, so someone in their 30s and 40s, and if you're starting your business in your 20s, you must be a glutton for punishment. But good luck, and it's probably, you could have a absolute brilliant time, because we're about to see some of the biggest changes in our industry, and that you could be riding that particular wave with a decent plan. You'll get well ahead of the game because you'll have an idea of which direction you need to go in. So most of us have an end goal in mind when we get to a point in our business, or when we start that business. What do we want that business to be able to provide for us? So the idea of your business plan is you build a business that provides the lifestyle that you want by starting at that point. And that is normally the end goal. So if we think about what we want from the business when we're finished with it, how are we going to close it? Are we going to sell it? Or are we going to pass it on? We must know that information, because it starts to make a difference 10 years out in terms of how we build the business from there. Okay, so that's what we need to do. And then what we're going to do is we're going to work back to where we are now. Because when we start to look at objections, and I might as well take care of that because that's what I said to do. There are two things I hear of, or things that are common objections that I get. That is, nothing ever goes to plan. And the other one I get a lot of is, I spent hours, days, weeks, however long, planning, but it was a total waste of time. I never looked at it again. I never used the document. which is heartbreaking if you have put that much effort into it. So we'll address the first one, and the two quotes I'm going to use to look at business planning were by a great strategic planner, General Patton. And he said, and it's something that's often quoted to me when I start waffling on about business plans, is he said, no plan survives contact with the enemy. And it's absolutely true. And I'm not going to ever argue with anyone who says that, because your business plan isn't a tablet of stone. Yeah, it's a flexible document. All you know is where you want to get to. How you're going to get there is something that you can modify on the fly, if you like. This is your live updates in your sat nav. You can change your route. You can take a twist and a turn, detour. What the sat nav is doing is it's keeping you in a general direction. That compass bearing that's kind of in the background, trying to make you avoid shiny objects, unless they're going to take you closer or get you to your goal quicker. That's the idea behind the sat nav. So you can see. So I love that quote by Patton. You know, and Mike Tyson's has got a version. So everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face. Once again, very difficult to argue with, especially if you've just been punched in the face by Iron Mike Tyson. But that's not what it's not what the actual document's for. It's not this is how we will do it and this is every step of the journey. It isn't about that, and I'll show you how I break mine down in a second when we do the example. And then the other objection, another quote by Patton, who said, an average plan carried out violently now is better than the perfect plan carried out tomorrow. Which makes total sense in war, but it also makes sense in business. Have an average plan. Have an idea. You can make it better as you go along. If you keep putting it off, procrastinating because it's not perfect, I haven't got all the information. Guess what? We never have all the information. Make a decision based on the information you have. And what's the information we have? Well, we have 2 bits of data that we should know. Well, we definitely have one, where we are now, our current location. What's our current, whatever it is you're measuring your business success on? Could be turnover and profit. They're 2 good ones to start with. And where do we want to be? Where does the turnover and profit need to be in my business? And let's get a plan to get from where we are now to where we want to be. There you go. 2 bits of information. What could be easier? Well, when I ask people what's the best version of their business, which is another way of getting your 10-year plan going, it's a bit of a struggle. They really don't know what it is they're trying to get to. And we go back to Yogi Berra there. If you don't know where you're going, you're unlikely to get there. So what I always ask people to do is do their personal plan first. And so what you then do is you then end up building a business that serves you instead of the other way around. You don't become a slave to your business. So I'm going to give you an example of how you can use your personal plan to inform your big vision, and how you would look at your big vision for yourself, your personal plan, to give you an idea of where you should be and what you're going. So this personal plan for someone who's 50 years old and wants to retire when they're 65 or thereabouts. Okay, and they've had this idea that they want, when they retire, to live a reasonably comfortable lifestyle, and they've decided they want £3,000 a month income, which is not an unreasonable amount. So how do you go about that? Well, you've got to find out 2 things, haven't you? You've got to find out what passive income you'll have, and then you'll need to know what is inside your pension pot. How much money have you put in your pension pot? Because they're the 2 things that determine your income once you've retired. So how much do you need in your pension pot to pay you £3,000 a month if you retire at around about 60, 65? Well, it comes out at somewhere between, depending on how much lump sum and various other bits and pieces. In today's money, it comes out, this was literally 15 minutes research, somewhere between 600 and 750,000. That's how much you need in there. And if you haven't got anything in your pension pot, because you haven't been putting anything away, that's a chunk of money to find in 10 years. Let's say in the current pension plan, that individual is going to have £150,000 in their pension pot, which means they'll probably get somewhere around about £1,000 a month with £150,000 in their pension pot. So they need £2,000 of passive income. What do I mean by passive income? Well, property or dividends from the business that they've maybe haven't sold, but they've passed it on and they're now still maybe a silent partner and they're taking, or a shareholder, and they're taking dividends. So if that's the case, yeah, you've got a decision to make. You can either put, if you're heading for 150 with your current level of saving into your pot, you now need to put an additional £25,000 a year into that pension pot, or buy a property and systemize the business so that the business is successful once you're no longer there. By systemize the business, I mean make a business that runs successfully without you, that will be making enough profit that you can take an income out of that business even though you no longer attend. That's what you need to do. And if you don't own your business building, now's a good chance to start looking for a building to buy, if that's the kind of income you want once you retire. Because if you don't, you'll be working until you die. Simple as, because you won't be able to have enough money. And as self-employed people, we're not tending to look after ourselves. We don't tend to think about the future. We're too busy dealing with the here and now. So this is a bit of an eye-opener. If you haven't looked into your pension pot, what you're going to do, and you don't own your building, have a look at how much your business would be worth. Don't go to one of these business valuation people. They will tell you a load of lies. Have a look at what you could sell a business for by looking what people are selling their business for. So now we know what we need from the business. So we need an additional 25k or money to buy a property, and we need to systemize the business. Well, how does that affect our big vision, our 10-year plan? So what we've got and what we're going to work back from, instead of building a detailed plan from here to where we need to get to, what we're going to do is we're going to say, what do we want from our business? So we have an idea of what the business needs to provide us, and we can flesh that out with more and more detail as time goes on. Or we can say, right, that's what it is. I need a chunk of money. So how am I going to do it? Well, why don't I build a business from where I am now to have £1 million of turnover and 20% profit in 10 years? So that's a business that's doing £1 million turnover and £200,000 profit, £100,000 to invest, £100,000 for the owner per year in 10 years' time. That is a realistic goal. And how do I know that's a realistic goal? So I've done the numbers for you. How do you work back from where you are to a £1 million turnover business? Well, if that business is 2 members of staff working reasonably hard, doing about 250k right now, that's a change of £750,000 in 10 years, isn't it? So how I look at a 10-year plan is I look at 3 3-year planning cycles, 1 spare year, just in case everything goes wrong, a COVID year, if you like. And then what I look at is in each of those 3 years, so in the first year, we're going to achieve a 20% of that goal. In the second 3-year cycle, we're going to try and achieve 30% of that goal. And then in the third 3-year cycle, we're going to achieve 50% of that goal. Because it's all compounding. Everything we do now is going to compound on top of each other until it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, if you like. So in the first 3-year planning cycle, in year 1, we're going to achieve 20% of the 20%. In the second year, we're going to achieve 30% of the 20%. And in the third year, we're going to achieve 50% of the 20%. Sounds confusing, but it's not. So in year 1, we're going to build on our current business around about £30,000. That'll take us up to 280. And then we're going to build on year 2 around about 45k, which will take us to 325. And then we're going to build in year 3, 75k on top of that, which will take us to 400,000. And that's our 3-year cycle. That's 20% of the total. That's how we're going to do it. And to do that, we're going to roughly need 4 members of staff, 3 of which will be productive. So in that time period, we're going to take on 2 members of staff, 1 of which will have to be productive. Now, if you think about that now, and you're planning that now, if you took on an apprentice, he could be that 3rd member of staff. And you're only really looking for a front of house. And that apprentice could start bringing in more and more income. Look at the IMI for return on investment on apprentices, and you'll get the idea. So how does that actually work out as a business plan when I'm talking in such broad strokes? Well, simply this. if this business is doing that 250k based on £50 an hour, and I put these numbers in a spreadsheet earlier, so trust me, it does work out, and they did £10 an hour more, and they did improve their efficiency at this point by 10%, and did a 10% cost reduction, and increased their margin by 10%. A business that was turning over, which is reasonably realistic, of 256k, would now be doing 288k. That's a £32,000 increase in a year, but without actually increasing any members of staff. That's all doable by refining your processes, putting your prices up, becoming more efficient, looking for cost savings while improving value, and making sure you've got the right margin on all your parts. Doesn't sound too difficult when I say it like that. Obviously, there's a whole lot of work in that, but you can see how, because we now know where we're going, we can make a plan to get there, which is exactly what the Business Sat Nav is for. Hopefully that's been of some interest. I've probably gone over time. I can't see my clock. Slightly. If anyone's got any questions, just send me a direct message. I'll always respond at some point. If this training video or any of the others I have done have made you think about how you currently run your business, then I've achieved my aim. If you think you need more help and support to implement any changes to improve your business, simply send me a direct message and then we can jump on a Zoom call to see if we can help. Remember, always put first things first, and if you think you should, you must. Thanks for watching. Cheers.